Donald Trump has been desperately hoping that the Supreme Court would give the formal okay to his firing of Federal Reserve Governor Lisa Cook and possibly rubber stamp other future firings that would effectively eliminate the last vestiges of independence that these formerly independent bodies like the Fed have had. Thankfully, so far, based on this week's goings on at the Supreme Court, it isn't looking too good for him, particularly when it comes to Brett Kavanaugh, who said that the administration's arguments to oust Cook would weaken, if not shatter, the independence of the Fed. He says, let's talk about the real world downstream effects of this, because if this were set as a precedent, it seems to me, just thinking big picture, what goes around comes around. All the current president's appointees would likely be removed for cause on January 2029 if there's a Democratic president, or January 2033, then really we're at will removal. So what are we doing here? And all of that is very abundantly clear and should be front of mind for SCOTUS. We should not, there is a reason that you get onto the Fed for the terms that you do. Cook, for instance, was back in 2022, was put on by former President Joe Biden. It's a 14-year term. And look, you can be critical of the Fed and the decisions they make, and people often are, but there is at least a case to be made about why relatively durable but not lifetime appointments are made, and why it's not immediately just thrown out when a new administration comes in. There should be some independence so that they can decide things based on the health of the economy, or at least their view of what the economy should be like, and not just be fearful that if they don't do exactly what the president wants, they're gonna be canned. And so she was canned for basically nothing. They said that she had committed mortgage fraud. That fraud has as yet not been adjudicated criminally, civilly, in literally any way at all. And back in October, the justices did intervene to allow her to remain in her job temporarily, but we do need to see if that's gonna continue while the case proceeds, and we don't know for sure. It's not just Kavanaugh, by the way, that seems hesitant to allow this to go forward. John Roberts questioned how the justices should look at the president's accusations against Cook, saying, so it doesn't make a difference whether this was an inadvertent mistake on the mortgage or whether it was a devious way to get a better interest rate. Doesn't matter for you, right? So they seem a little bit concerned about that. Amy Coney Barrett expressed skepticism about whether the seriousness of the allegations against Cook was enough to warrant removal, and about the economic impact of her firing. There was also some discussion about the fact that it was done on Truth Social, which doesn't seem how these sorts of things should be done. So we don't know for sure what's gonna happen. We do know that SCOTUS has been very deferential so far towards Trump and the imperial, utterly unchecked presidency, but they do so far seem hesitant to allow this to go forward. Tehran, what do you make of it, and what do you expect will happen?
Well, I'm not a big fan of these lifetime cycles, right? But if I'm going to limit terms, I would do so starting with the Senate and the House, and not with the 9 justices of the Supreme Court. We have this lifetime cycle because it's supposed to institutionalize judicial independence and basically insulate them from these electoral cycles where this president comes in, this president comes out, but you are going to be impartial, you're gonna have the expertise, you're gonna have the stability. That's the concept of why we have these lifetime cycles for specifically the justices of the Supreme Court. I'm a big fan of checks and balances. The current administration seems not to be a fan of that. We need to discuss this. I'm a big fan of the Constitution, and Article 3 is what allows us to have this court, and this administration seems not to be a big fan of the Constitution either.
Yeah, well, and not just the court, but the House of Representatives as well. Even though they would do virtually anything he wants, they seem to, like, on principle, want to not go to them to do these things. They really do want to absorb all the power, and this, potentially unchecked ability to fire anyone they want in government, I think is one of the biggest extensions of it. So I am very worried about that. We don't know when the decision will come out, but I am hoping that SCOTUS gets at least this right.